right after this. Okay, very professional. Very professional. So this is the number 2 lap stream where, so at the beginning, like I said before, I have to open my notebook. The first couple of these are going to be more like almost like a lecture kind of thing, like Professor LK. Because most people don't know how to use training mode properly. Last week, I talked about what you actually use this mode for, because there's a lot of things you can do. Like for the past half an hour, you saw me like messing around combos, like trying to develop my character a little bit, which is one of the things I said you could do if you were here last week. So for the next couple of weeks, I'm going to either explain something or do something from that list of things you can do. That's kind of like the itinerary for the next couple of weeks. So since someone mentioned it last week, I wanted to start with neutral. I think it's a good idea to start with neutral. It's a pretty open-ended topic. This is not going to be a what is neutral, too much of a what is neutral or how do I play neutral or a theory of neutral kind of talk. One, that is a pretty long fucking talk, I think. Two, I want to keep it in the frame of training mode. So the neutral discussion this week is going to be from the perspective of training mode. So pretty much like, what would you do to lab neutral? Okay. Okay, yeah. So first, let's pick some cool characters. Even though I'm about to pick May's theme because it's kind of relaxing, I'm not about to pick May, actually. I will probably pick someone that's not May. Someone like, I don't know. Who you feeling? This guy? Okay. So before we can even talk about neutral at all, I think where you should start is exploring the phases of the game. So does anyone here know what I mean when I say phases of the game, like phases of a fighting game? That is my first question for you. That's right, I am asking the questions first. I have no idea what you speak of on phases. No idea. Phases of what? Phases of a fighting game. It's kind of an unfair question because I kind of thought of it on my own, but it makes sense if you think about it. I didn't even hear the question. Yeah, okay, so I'll skip one more time. Like, does anyone here know what I mean when I say the phases of a fighting game? Like neutral, pressure, okay, yeah. Like learning your fundamentals, learning your character, learning to play against people. No, so it's like the actual playing of the game. So when I say the phases of a fighting game, it's like the actual main things that happen when you're playing a fighting game. So these to me, there are, how many did I write here? There are 5 phases in a fighting game. One of them varies. So the first one I'm going to say varies upon the game. This is round start. Yeah, I know that question was a little unfair. technically, but I just wanted to see what people said. The first phase is a round start, so you could tell that a couple of things. One, some games it doesn't exist because you can move before the start of the round, or it's really not that important. So if you think about a game like Under Night or Melty, Marvel, technically yes, but also technically no, because the game can be decided at the start of the round. So that game's kind of special. But besides that, like games like Melty, usually French Break games, huh? But games where you can move before the start of the round, it's a little bit less important. Then for games where you can't move before the start of the round, which is most fighting games, it is the closer you are at the start of the round, the more important it is. So Guilty Gear, you are pretty close to your opponent at the start of the round compared to the other two Arc Sys games. In Persona and BlazBlue, you're not that close. But in this game, like Sin can actually just touch you. A lot of characters can touch you with something or come very close to touching you for something, right? So this is actually important in this game. So we're talking about Guilty Gear. It's actually pretty important. The person who is at best, you are attacking or you hit your opponent. At worst, you are getting attacked or your opponent hit you, and you could have a really big advantage or really big disadvantage depending on what you do pretty much as soon as the round starts. So that's pretty important. The second phase I want to talk about, or at least let you know about, that would be offense. So when I say offense, that is when one player is directly attacking another character. So most people call this rushdown, but for the sake of this, you could just call it offense. This is really easy to lab, of course, because you could just set the opponent to block, you could practice your stuff, you could set the opponent to do a block string, like a block string you want to use, and then test like your options against it. Okay, that one's pretty straightforward. And the opposite is pretty straightforward too. Defense is another phase of the game, and it's when your opponent is rushing you down. This is much harder to do, much harder to practice, much harder to be good at. Why? A couple of reasons. First of all, you yourself need to be exposed to the character's offense before you even know what you're defending against. That's a weird sentence, but let's say Millia does this string, and you get hit by this after Lust Shaker every time, and you don't know why. You don't know why because you don't play Millia, and you might get hit by this a bunch of times until you kind of notice, wow, after this sword stabby move, I always get hit. Like, I should go ask somebody, why am I getting hit? Then they tell you it's +6. You go, oh. So, unlike offense, where you can kind of just learn what, you can just kind of copy people, or, I mean, honestly, you can just copy what other people do. A lot of people do very similar types of offense, and it's pretty easy to figure out, like, different variations of offense. There's, like, advanced rushdown, but for defense, you can't really get anywhere until you get exposed to it a lot. The other thing that makes this hard is you then have to make a decision about what's the best way to guard something in the first place. Most people don't even get to that step, or if they do, they only get to the part where, oh, should I be this? Or something. They don't really consider all the options. So defense is a surprisingly large topic to talk about, and it's much harder to practice and research than offense is. Okay. The next one is one. I mean, if you're in this stream, you're pretty familiar with this. It is the set play. The set play. I think this is its own thing, because it's a special situation. Whoever got knocked down has a much more limited set of options than when they are defending. Not only that, but usually for set play, you have things that you can do that you can't do during rushdown. So for example, during rushdown, I can't really do like H-disc. Like, I could pretty much just get hit. If I just do H-Disc, Sin can mash for free, but if I knock him down, I could do H-Disc safely. Maybe I can't do Dash Disc, but I could do H-Disc safely and do a special type of offense that I can't do normally. This is, I say, a pretty large topic also, but it's not that difficult to practice. I think the difficulty in set play is a couple things. Most people stop at just learning what their character does at a base level. So, like, let's say you're a Millia player. If you learn, like, to do, like, Dash Disc, Bad Moon, Dash Disc, Hair Card, you're already, like, at a good spot. So, the place you go next, usually, is finding counters to everyone's options. And you go from there. That's why it's kind of, I say it's kind of easy to lab this, because since it's such a boxed-in situation, like, you understand the opponent's knocked down, they only have these options, I have this stuff I can do. It's not that hard to lab it up and make everything really tight and nice and restrict your opponent's options. So, the last one, let me get a quick sip. The last one I want to talk about is the one that is the topic of this stream, of course. It is neutral. It is neutral. So, how would you define neutral? The neutral game. This neutral is like, it's almost a buzzword, like the way some people use it. Some people don't actually understand what goes into neutral. They just hear other people or better people talk about neutral. It's like, oh, neutral. I mean, what do you think neutral is before I move on? It's what Sonic Hawks does. Point in which neither character has established offense. That's pretty good. State of game where neither player is the pressure or defender. That's pretty much how I think of it. Someone said something that's interesting. That's almost right. Neutral is a state where each player has the same options. The place where you screwed up is the option set. Just because neither player is directly being rushed down or defending, doesn't mean they have the same option set. For example, if you are playing against, you know what, I'll even switch characters too. How many times have you heard me say, where no one has an advantage? I also do not think that's a good answer for what neutral is. Let's say, and if you watch this stream regularly, you have definitely heard me say some shit about this guy sometimes. So, how many times have you seen, I'm fighting against Soul. Soul is all the way over here, but I have no meter, and he has 50 meter, and I say something like, I literally cannot do anything, even though he's not hitting me. And I'm not hitting him, and we're pretty far away from each other, I outright tell you, I can't do anything. So just because neither of us are attacking directly or defending, does not mean that one player does not have an advantage. When he has 50 meter and I have no meter, and we are standing here, he has a very big advantage over me, even though neither of us are being attacked directly. Something to think about. What else? So that's why also where no one is at an advantage is not actually correct. The buttons you use to properly construct your own pressure save yourself from offense. Not quite. No one's attacking or defending, but you're moving around the jockey position. Unrestricted options might be a better way to put it. So like I think the easiest, simplest definition of neutral is the period of the game where neither player is directly attacking or defending. That's the easiest way to put it without making any assumptions about the type of situation the two characters could be in. because, like I said, it's very easy for one character to have an advantage, a big advantage in neutral. I mean, I could list a ton, like literally a ton of situations in neutral where one character has a blatant advantage over the other character. It's pretty easy to actually come up with that kind of stuff, right? Now, this is also pretty hard to lab for the same reason as defense, because you need to play against a character a good amount to recognize what are the issues they're presenting for you. So, for example, since I have Soul out on here, it's pretty easy to. Everyone here has played against Soul if they play this game, or you might also play Soul. So, Soul has a bunch of moves that you need to know how to beat him, right? So, for example, this jump H, this amazing jump H, or this 2D, this Champions 2D, this ridiculous 2S, his 6P, his 5K, Gunflame. Like, he has a lot of good stuff. Fafnir, he's got a lot of good stuff that he could just do. If you are playing against Soul for the first time, he is hitting you a lot with stuff. He's got jump P, he's got all sorts of good buttons he can use. I'm not even talking about special moves. I only talked about one of his amazing special moves. So before you even start researching neutral, you have to play against him and see what is giving you problems. But once you do that, just like defense, you can go to the lab and test stuff. And the thing that's nice about neutral compared to defense is, and this is why I think it's a little easier, is like you could test a move against move in a very straightforward manner. So, for example, I'll stick with Soul. So, for example, I'm going to step back and talk about round start again, just to show what I mean by you could just kind of test moves against moves. So, I'm not sure if I did this last week. I'm pretty sure I did not, but there is a way to. This is how I practice round start. I only just started doing this like 2 weeks ago or something. So I'll do this. Oh, whoops. Actually, this is pretty common. So that's like one of Soul's most common round starts, right? So then I'll do. I think I'm messing up because that's supposed to win, I think. Oops. Yeah, there we go. So what I'm doing is, since we recover from the blitz at the same time, it's like it's round start. So I start in the middle, just like round start position. I press blitz and record at the same time, and then I lose more often than not, right? So the same idea behind like. Whoops. So the same idea behind like doing that, you can do the same kind of thing for neutral too. So, for example, this is usually how I practice against moves in neutral. So let's say you're a new Melia player, you're playing against Soul for the first time, and you are getting bodied by this move, and that is pretty reasonable. This move is saying this move is pretty good is an understatement. And the worst part is like, if you, oh, I'm not close enough, but if I got counter hit, yeah, that leads into 50%. So you want to make sure you know how to deal with that move. So the first thing I would try to do, and this is actually pretty straightforward. What you want to do is just try out moves against that move and see not just what works, but also what you think is the most practical, like what you think you can actually do in a match. So let's say that that you use 2S and it's working a bunch, which is cool. But you have to think, oh, yeah, that works, but do I actually think I could do that in a match? Like, doesn't he have other moves that would just hit me if I'm running around trying to do 2S? And not only that, like, is the return I get for trying that worth it? That's the big thing. Is the return I get for that worth it? Your ideal answer for stuff in neutral is stuff that's not only practical, like you can do it, but also you get a good return. So in my case, for this example, Millia has two things you do really often. One thing you do that happens to beat it. You don't do it looking for 2D, but it will also beat 2D. And then one thing that... Am I remembering this right? Yeah. One thing that you will likely not do very often, but it's good to know that you can do. So the most common two, this is the one you see a lot. Oh, whoops. Wow. There you go. This you see a lot. My whip punish is mildly whack. There you go. This you see a decent amount. And the thing is, like, this beats a lot of moves. That beats a lot of moves, and it beats that. Which is nice. You have to wait for it, but you would be waiting if you're playing this match, right? This is another one you see a lot from, like, high-level play. Oh, I missed it. Obviously that's really good, right? Because you get a full combo, which is good for Millia. This is what you want. Then if he blocks for whatever reason, you have the advantage. So that's pretty good. Those are the two options you see often. The one you see not that much, but is still pretty good, is that. This just happens to win, but it also beats other stuff, right? And the one you don't see very often, but it's good to know, is that. So why wouldn't you see this one very often? It goes back to the point that I was making before about how practical you think it is and the return, the risk return. So something like a dash 2K, that beats a lot of stuff Soul does, and the return is really high because even though the combo doesn't do a lot of damage, it will knock down. That's good. That's really good. The Far Slash is, the return is low, but the risk is also pretty low. Like, he has stuff that could beat it. Like, for example, like, that blatantly beats it, but usually if you're waiting, I mean, just kind of depends on who you're playing, but her Far Slash beats a lot of stuff he can do. He has to call it out. He has to outright call you out, so the risk return is pretty good. For 6H, the return is really high if it's counter hit. It's decently high if it hits because it knocks down. And usually at the ranges you're playing at, it's okay to take that risk. It's fine, right? So that one's not bad. That one's not bad. 6K, it should be obvious why this is risky because it only specifically beats that. It beats 2S also, but the thing is, it only beats a couple of really specific moves, and everything else he does would beat it. Everything else. So I want you to think about that. So here's a follow-up question. I'll switch back to Sin, or maybe just another character in general. Here's a follow-up question. Actually, you know what? So what do you guys think when someone talks about risk return? Like, how serious, or what, like, how are you defining that in your head? How are you judging that, the idea of risk return? Because this idea is pretty important when you're talking about neutral also. Just like business. Damn. Damn. What a serious guy. Isn't the term risk return self-explanatory? Risk return is a lot too. Oh well, you can write a book on it. Sorta. I mean, if you talk about strictly defining it, it's pretty easy to define. But just talking about risk return in terms of neutral is a pretty big talk. It is a pretty big talk. But it's confusing mostly because I do not understand. I put my mind that is matchup specific. So the thing with risk return. So I remember. So this is a thing for. This is some real fucking talk. If you played fighting games for a while and if you reach like a decent to good level, like a competitive level, even if you've never talked about the idea of risk return, you understand the idea of risk return. But if you're like a new fighting game player outright, and like you're playing your first fighting game, when someone explains the concept of risk return to you in a fighting game, it's a pretty unusual concept to consider. Like the idea of like, oh, I'll use my good move here because it's good and beats a lot of stuff. That's pretty simple for a gamer to understand, right? Because in other games, like one-player games, you just try to do the good thing, and as you go on, you get better things, so you use the better things. It's pretty straightforward. But in a fighting game, even though it's really good to use the good thing, there's definitely nothing wrong in using the good thing. If you want to take an example, so if you talk about set play, you obviously want to do the good things. Like, instead of doing the fraudulent setup, I mean, Guilty Gear is an awesome example, because if you do a fraudulent setup, they will outright throw you. They will be like, no, you can't do it, this is bad. You have to do good things to hit people. You can't do bad things. You will never hit people with bad things. But in neutral, it could be a little bit more ambiguous. Because, for example, like here I have Mei. Mei versus Millia. Mei has, this button is fucking godlike in this match. This move is really good. Not only does it has a good hitbox, and it reaches behind, and it's active for a long time, and it has low recovery. So, when I showed Souls 2D, my answer was to wait for it. My best answer was to wait for it and punish. Here, I am going to get hit every time. It's pretty hard to do. I practiced it a good amount though, so I can do it. But it's not that hard. I mean, I'm sorry. It's pretty hard to do in a real match. You're probably not doing that in a real match. So, for Mei, it's not that risky to hit this button. Like, not only does it have a good hitbox, knocks down on hit, which is good for her, but it beats a lot of moves that Millia players like to use. Like, it beats one of Millia's trademark moves, is Far Slash. Just outright clean. In spots where Millia wants to use it. That sucks. It beats her sweep most of the time. Which is another move that Millia really likes to use. And it's hard to whip punish. And because it has a low recovery, it's hard, not impossible, but it's hard to throw pin at. So, when you take those common options and put it against 2D, you're like, man, like, this move has pretty low risk. Like, even if Millia does hit you, unless she has meter, she doesn't get anything most of the time. And the return, you should get knocked down. Like, you knock Millia down, it's great. Millia doesn't have good defense. Millia has low HP. You can set up you can do a setup, potentially do a lot of damage. It's all good in the hood, right? So, risk return on hitting that button is really good. But what happens when a Millia player introduces a move that beats it? So this is that 6H. That 6H is back, right? So, even though most of the time this move has a pretty decent amount of risk, it's slow, it has a decent amount of recovery, it will outright beat this move. It beats this move. And the return is high. The return is high. So when that move is in play, the risk return of 2D changes a little bit. it becomes riskier to do if the Millia is willing to hit that button. You still want to use the 2D, and this is probably a point that some players might miss too. It doesn't mean you can't do 2D, but you have to consider that the opponent has something that makes your move that apparently has really good risk return a little bit more risky. A little bit more risky. So, what you can get from really thorough testing in neutral is not only what moves beat what, but how practical it actually can be to try to do in a match, and then judge like how risky is it to do, like the risk associated with it. Everyone has like a general moves that they use a lot. I use Mace 2D because she uses this move in a lot of matchups. It's a good fucking move. It's like one of her trademark moves. Or like if you're testing against Millia, the two moves you're probably testing against on the ground is it the first disconnect? Yeah. Oh no? What? I mixed myself up. The two moves you're really testing against it has to be Far Slash, right? And the other one has to be Sweep. These are like her trademark moves. Like every Millia is hitting these two buttons. So once you are aware of what the opponent's character's common moves are, and you start labbing against it, you can really break down like why they like to do it. Are they using it right in the first place? How risky it is for them to actually use this move. So for example, in this match, we talked about Sweep. It's actually pretty risky for Millia to use that Sweep, even though it's a good move. So not only does it lose to this, but it also loses to that. That has Split and Roll, so... Oh, yeah, that's what's supposed to happen every time. There you go. I had like the super rare. If it's out, if mine's out first, like I'll win, but in a match it barely happens. May just has a lot of stuff that beats Millia's Sweep as long as she gets it out first. So you'll see main players whiffing a lot of stuff on Millia just so she can't use her common moves. And the risk return is pretty good. Like I don't have Millia doesn't have a lot of HP. If you do something that knocks down, then great. And it kind of discourages them from hitting the moves they like to do, which is your goal. I mean, it's definitely one of your goals. So, summary. Not only are you trying to see what beats what, but also how practical it is. And then from that, you could determine the actual risk return on doing something. Questions so far? That one might have been a little tough. I'm not gonna lie. Or yeah, I could just throw a pin and do 420 damage. That's true. Can't you just watch MatchViz to understand this? I don't think you will get anything from a match. I mean, if you're starting, you can get like combos, pressure, set play from match videos. But I think it is pretty difficult to understand neutral until you play the match yourself. I think it's pretty hard to identify why someone is doing something, because this is what will actually happen. You'll have a disconnect between, you will for sure have a disconnect between what you see in the match video and what happens when you play. You don't get all the information from a match video. You get a lot. If you are familiar with the match, you will get a ton of info from the match video. But you need, just like defense and just like neutral, you need a good amount of prior knowledge before you could really use that match video footage. Like for example, let's say I played against Slayer today for the very first time. Slayer, right? Slayer, you know, his gimmick is he can make stuff invincible. He's got BDC, blah blah blah. The Slayer today, I noticed, did a ton of Dandy Step and Mappa. I got blown up by Mappa and Dandy Step. I didn't know what to do about those two moves in neutral. So I go on YouTube and I watch a Japanese Milia versus a Japanese Slayer, and the Japanese Slayer is just kind of walking back and forth kind of slowly and just waiting for Milia to do things. That does not help me at all because my problem was Mappa and Dandy. But me not knowing this, I see the Milia, let's say the Milia wins in the video, right? So the Milia wins, I try to do what that Milia does against the same Slayer and lose anyway because I still didn't find out how to beat Mappa and Dandy. That's step one. You really can take a lot from a match video if you know stuff about the match already. Especially like the more you learn about the match, and then you go back and watch high level play, you might notice like really small nuances about the match you didn't see like a year ago or when you were a beginner or whatever. But you definitely will not get it all just from watching. You definitely will not, definitely won't. The people you play are not the people in the videos. They're doing different shit, so it just doesn't transfer over like one to one. Yeah, I feel like I had another point, but I forgot it. So you guys study up, or you'll wonder why is something not working for me when working the video. Yep. Okay, I remember the other thing I wanted to say. So I think a kind of unique thing in this game is, I feel like, and I don't play like an Elfelt or Sin or Bedman, like someone who can convert everything. Because if I played them, I probably would not totally have this thought. But I think outside of like moves versus moves and stuff, you kind of need to understand the general way to approach a character. You definitely need to understand that about defending. You need that for neutral as well. Like, if you don't have a general way of understanding, like, oh, this is kind of how I go about the matchup, and then as far as like small point versus point interactions, I could adjust depending on the player, then you're not really going to be playing the matchup properly. Most of the times where I had a ton of problems with a match is because I didn't even have an approach to the matchup. I can give a ton of examples of this from my first like 6 months of playing. Like Slayer was owning me up. I could still say stuff now. Like I feel like only in the past month or so I kind of got a hang of like, oh, this is how I should approach Axel. Like up until then, I was just kind of running around until I got knocked down and I set played them to death, like straight up. It's just lucky slash at the same time unfortunate that there's not any super good Axels to like destroy me until I really learn it. That kind of thing definitely matters when you're trying to build a plan for neutral. Any other questions? Now is definitely a nice question time. I did talk about everything I wanted to talk about, right? Yep. If you have any questions, make yourself heard. All 0 of you. Just realized it's showing 0 viewers. It's true. What kind of questions? Questions about what we talked about? Yeah. I don't enjoy training mode unless it's combos and setups. I really, real talk, I spend a good fucking amount of time in this mode. Not because I'm a lab monster, it's kind of really just of necessity. Like, my character has the second lowest life. There are a lot of specific situations I have to let him neutral because I don't have conversions off everything. There are, like, at a glance, her pressure is not good. I think her pressure is really good, but at a glance, it's not good. There's just a lot of stuff you could work on with Familia. So, a really interesting thing is, like, how much people hate this character, even though, like, I mean, I get why. She's crazy strong, but when you look at her tools at a glance, besides set play and, like, pin, you're just like, well, she's got a good far slash, good sweep. She got S to square C. Like, she got, but when you look in detail at all the stuff she's got, you're like, wow, like, are you serious? But that stuff all came from Lab. Oh, people were. I don't think I heard the word OS yet. How do you practice those? I mean, how do you practice OS? I mean, first you need the one, right? If you're talking about developing OS, that's a different talk, though. That's a different talk. Now, how do you make training mode fun? I mean, I think it's just fun to, like, explore and figure out and learn more about my character, because I mean, the main thing is, like, whatever you get from here that's practical, you can use it against people. So all the stuff I've come up, not all the stuff I've used in training mode I've used against people, but a lot of stuff I've come up with I've used. It's actually, it's pretty effective, I mean, to be honest. I mean, I gotta catch, after I started talking, that's when people ask questions. That's how this works. How would you go about learning how to beat Mappa Dandy Step? Usually I go to Extra Step and look at hitboxes if they're available. But, I mean, if you're talking about what I did for Milia, it went in phases. So I know, so basically I was like, oh, there's a bunch of things I can do, and I kind of thought about risk return, about both, on dealing with both. Yeah. Let me see his answers. Man, now the chat is going too fast. Are all these fighting games about fast reflexes and predicting? Not necessarily. You do need pretty good reflexes. You don't need amazing reflexes, so I don't think my reflexes are especially fast. It depends on your character, whether or not, like, how much you need to actually predict or not. My character, I'm very fortunate that I can usually play a more reactionary game than other characters. Some characters, they have to guess a lot. That's pretty tough to do. Yeah, write out your question. Who cares if it's long on mobile? I'm trying to catch up. I'm trying to catch up. Fuck! Okay, so people are talking. Yeah, hard reads, hard reads. Are there any glitches, tech in the game? There's mad tech. I don't know about how many glitches are really used. Usually glitches get taken out, like bugs get taken out.